It is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I'm very proud to share with all of you what transpired with my interview with the reputable person that we're about to watch. This was made possible by the help of God and the chance to be in the class of one of the best professors in graduate school in the Polytechnic University of the Philippines, the former regional director of Region 3, Dr. Beatrice G. Torno. The person that I interviewed possesses all the attributes that are valuable in the advocacy of the Department of Education in having quality education and lifelong opportunities that can be accessed by everyone. Beyond demeanor is the passion to transform and influence the creation of an organization of culture that is consistent with his own values of transparency, ethics, and accountability. I am blessed and honored. Also, it is a privilege to introduce to you one of the known persons in the field of education. I would like to welcome in our link our Undersecretary for Curriculum and Instruction at the Department of Education, Dr. Diosdado M. San Antonio. Good afternoon
Thank
po,
you very
sir.
much, Miss Clarice. Good afternoon, fellow teachers, and good afternoon to my sister Beth, your professor, I understand. It's a privilege being able to join you today.
Thank you so much po. We are here today po because one of our requirements in the Polytechnic University of the Philippines under Dr. Beatrice Torno in one of our subjects in leadership is to conduct an interview with the known leaders in the Department of Education, and I'm so honored po that you allowed us to spare some of your precious time. We know that you're really, really busy. Just to let you know po, we are recording this for documentation purposes, and this will also guide us as to how to improve our teaching profession, and also it will help us po in our growth when it comes to taking this path in the long run. So to proceed po immediately with our questions, first question po that we have, how long have you been in the field of education?
I've been a teacher myself since 1985. I understand you. I'm older. My years of experience in DepEd is older than your chronological age. Yeah, so I'm turning 37 years in DepEd by June of this year.
That really says a lot why when we hear you speak in the television, we know how experienced you are in this field. And we would like to know, sir, for the second question, who influenced you to choose this career path?
Of course, I was inspired by my teachers when I was in high school. The other thing is, was not my first choice. I wanted to be an engineer myself. Having been a student in a trade school in our province, I thought the best course then for me was to be an engineer. But realizing that our family could not afford to send me to an engineering school during that time, we could not access engineering courses in the public schools in our province. I don't remember any university then operated by the state offering engineering courses. On the education courses like the one I took, which was in fact industrial arts, because that was the only major available for the students in that college then. So essentially, in the end, I said, oh, okay, I'll be a teacher. So this is my second choice. I have no regret having enrolled in the College of Education.
Wow. So it is humbling to know po no na even our undersecretary experienced that when you were young, that we really have our first choice and teaching might be our second choice, but then we just realize that it's something that we will be really passionate about. I want you to share with us din po, sir, how do you promote a safe and effective school-wide learning environment?
Of course, we are very fortunate now because the Department of Education is very strong on child protection. We have an existing child protection policy. I would have to also confess that when I was a young teacher, even when I was a young teacher in charge, Of course, there was no child protection policy then, and we would handle, discipline um, students the traditional way. I would even, like, my students would not want me to tell their parents that they were punished in the school because they would double the punishment. That was how parents would behave when teachers would report that the kids are not behaving well. They would even also punish their children the traditional way. But what I'm saying is, of course, the idea of promoting safe and engaging a learning environment is always important. So even during our days when, as I've said, we would still be allowed to to do corporal punishment. Um, um, but we made sure that it was really for the sake of the youngsters learning the importance of being, responsible, performing their tasks, and all these things. So, yeah, we would always collaborate with parents. I served in a barangay high school before. I think that's something most of you would not understand. These were the schools operated by the municipalities in the provinces. The teachers would not get paid very, regularly, and it's not even at par with the national government employees. But of course, I was not that unfortunate because it was only for a short period of time. Because eventually the government declared that high school should be nationalized. So sorry, but I had to share a lot of these details for you to understand the context. That we lived, especially when I was a teacher. I was full time in the classroom for 3 years before I got designated as teacher in charge. Then I served as teacher in charge for like 6 years, I think. So essentially 9 years in the classroom. I would say that we made sure that the classroom was safe, and of course always having learners who were engaged.
Thank you so much, sir. And having leaders who really have experience teaching inside the classroom are really one of the important factors for us teachers, because we can feel that our leaders that we look up to really know what we're going through. It's difficult to handle such a class, and during your time you mentioned about corporal punishment, and that was really true. I think when I was grade one, that was still implemented, but then that was really for the good of the students, and that was effective during that time. And we appreciate you sharing your experiences during your teaching years. Thank you, sir. For the next question, sir, what is your concept of an institutional plan?
Institutional plan. Of course, in the schools, I understand you have school improvement plans. In the division offices, we have the division development plan, DEDP. We also have the regional education development plan. We have the DepEd plan for education. So an institutional plan is something that has been put together, usually collaboratively, engaging all the stakeholders involved, so that the institution, either a school, in the case of DepEd, region, division office, or the central office, is able to accomplish the mandate. Take note that until now, I think the main mandate of schools and all DepEd offices is to ensure that all the youngsters of school age 5 to 18 are able to benefit from basic education services, or we make sure that our services is accessible, would be accessible to the learners. Then they learn. Those that enroll in our schools are able to learn. So this refers to quality. And the other pillar of our, mandate is on good governance, making sure that the things we do will end up being able to contribute to the task of making the students learn, while we, use resources in a very efficient way, and we try to be very effective. But in the new, if I may just share, before our term ends this coming June of 2022, the Department of Education will unveil, under the leadership of Secretary Leonor Liling Magtolis Briones, we will unveil a basic education development plan that is valid until 2030, and we will be changing the pillars of our performances. So we'll say access. We used to include equity part of the access in the soon to be unveiled BEDP. We will be saying access, meaning making sure that the learners are enrolled, but we will be recognizing that equity is a major pillar. We would be making sure that all children, regardless of their circumstances, are really made to experience formal basic education program. Then we'll do quality as well, because that should not be abandoned. And the fourth pillar will be about resilience. We want to pay attention to the shaping of learners and institutions that are resilient, that even in the midst of Herculean challenges, we would know how to start again and proceed with our efforts to make ourselves ready to compete in the so-called VUCAD world. Some would say DVOCAD world, diverse, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world with disruptive. So may mga D na dinagdag. Anyway, so so the plan is supposed to be a product of a collaborative effort, which is nothing but it's about the things, the strategies, the object, the goals. I think I have already clarified. The strategies selected after a series of meetings that are expected to deliver the results I have mentioned.
Thank you, sir. Knowing that we will be soon changing, as you mentioned, in the Department of Education, it is overwhelming to know that our leaders are still trying to work on, you said, until the 2030 plan is really something big. And we look forward to that. One of DepEd's aim to promote this kind of education, which should be lifelong learning for our students. To continue as a follow-up question, sir, what do you think is the major factor being considered in crafting an institutional plan?
Of course, there are factors. I would say, yes, a lot of factors. Normally, you analyze your own situation. I think it's called situational analysis through the so-called SWOT-C. You look into the strengths, the threats, the opportunities, the challenges that exist in your organization, and the strategy would normally be to capitalize on your strengths, to take advantage of the opportunities, to minimize the weaknesses or the challenges, and yes, the weaknesses, and at the same time make sure that the challenges are properly addressed. Those are the primary considerations. So you can never come up with a plan that does not start from making sure that you are fully familiar and aware of the situation that is existing in your place, and then you identify, as I've said, your goals, how you want to be. You clarify your vision of a high performing institution or a high performing school, and then the plan is about the strategies and the techniques that you will implement, the activities that you will undertake, so that you will be transformed from the current situation to that the dream, the dream future that you have in your own schools or in the organizations where you are.
Thank you, sir. What do you think, sir, are some of the strategic teaching innovations that you have conceptualized to improve your institutional plans?
In my previous life as a regional director, your professor, Sister Beth, was my partner in DepEd Calabarzon. She's fully aware that I did not actually try to, do a lot of things. I just made sure that we somehow transform the organizational culture through our T-governance advocacy. T-governance is transparency, ethics, and accountability in doing our tasks as leaders for learning. And this one is an intervention that is anchored on a framework called Scouter's Track. This is an acronym of the things that that we do. If you are a governance advocate, you strengthen the merit system, you create partnerships, you open channels of communication, you uphold the norms of conduct for public officials, you take a part in efforts to make teaching learning better, you enable every child to be transform into their full potentials. You actually recognize best practices, and then you sustain efforts for SBM. It's an acronym actually I was mentioning, and it's easy for me to recall because these are the R in the track is making sure that the reports are authentic. Another the next O is optimizing ICT. The C is creating conserving energy and all resources, and the K is keeping school safe and eco-friendly, etc. So that was one. The other advocacy was to intensify the culture of research in Calabarzon. I'm referring to my own personal experience in organizing free research clinic to anyone. I mean, participated by anybody who's interested. They would report to a venue before, or we could still do face-to-face, sessions with those who wish to do research. And then I would share things I know about research and provide them meals, mga ganon. And then, so I intensified, we organized all sorts of research conferences at the school, division, regional, national, and even international levels. I even sent all the superintendents in Calabarzon to the European Conference on Education Research, I think in 2017, to share what we were doing as because even our interventions were research-based. In fact, one output was we also shaped a learning-focused school leadership framework, which was presented by the superintendents and the assistant superintendents the following year in two conferences in Europe, one in Denmark, the other one in Italy. So these were things that I could remember I did: research, culture of research, the governance advocacy, and of course, I we were very strong in journalism. I mean, Calabarzon was champion. All my life as RD in Calabarzon, we were number one in the NSPC. That's something that, of course, I'm very proud to share with everyone. And of course, the other thing is we blazed the trail for the so-called ISO certification of regional offices. We were among the two first regions to be able to obtain a certification of the processes that we had, so that yes, we can claim that our systems are world class.
Really, what we see in the news and in our online platforms are just tip of the icebergs. If people could hear this interview, really, they would be amazed as to how you manage all of this, sir. With that, sir, we would like to know, what are your inspirations in implementing such programs in the school under your supervision?
Of course, I my most first and foremost inspiration is my name. It's Diosdado San Antonio. I would always tell people, how could I be a bad person when my name is God-given Saint Anthony, and I would be making people commit blasphemy if I will not do very well. So everything I did was really consistent with the core values of DepEd: pagiging makadiyos, makatao, makabansa, makakalikasan. I'm not yet perfect. I'm not yet a saint in the real word, in the real sense of the word. But I try very hard to make sure that the public service I render is an authentic public service. I can look at the eyes of everyone in the whole world, and I know nobody can say si Diosdado corrupt yan. So I really made sure that that alone could happen. So my inspiration was really, of course, I more of a task-oriented person. I really want to accomplish things. I'm inspired by the thought that I'm creating results because of the efforts I exert. So those are my inspiration. It's not about me becoming a Usec. It was not about it. It was really about demonstrating that a public servant can be can be a person who is still a human being, hindi pumasok yung power sa ulo. So those are my, I mean, so it's really the name. And of course, I think the other inspiration is I'm very fortunate. I have a wife who is my conscience. She's a rank and file. She does not work in Dep Ed, but she would always remind me never to take home or bring home anything that does not come from my legitimate, activities. So we live simply. So we have no need for extravagance.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. I have witnessed that, and I was really, I couldn't say more because the first time that I saw your number, your phone number, due to the transparency in your system, I really said, how can this person give his number to unknown people? And that's how transparent you are. That's how humble you are. We can easily reach you, just like today. So I really, really appreciate that, and may God bless you more for your humility, sir. Thank you so much. Now, as we move on to our eighth question, we only have 13, so we just have like five to go after this question. How is being a leader fulfilling at the same time also frustrating?
I would say when the leader's life is essentially fulfilling. I even would tell people that my most fulfilling phase in my life as a DepEd employee was my stint as regional director in Calabarzon. Fulfilling in the sense that I was able to effect confidently. I think this is being affirmed by many of my former colleagues, including you perhaps, Clarice, that yeah, it's possible to transform the culture of the organization. I know that it's not easy because, in Dep Ed, usually the superintendents or even principals behave like kings and princesses. But I demonstrated to them that the public servant, even if you're the RD, can still eat in the canteen. So these are examples of the deliberate efforts I did that made me so fulfilled that in the end, even the middle level managers in the regional office made some efforts not even to bother our janitors or even our utility workers to buy food for them because they knew when it's my time to take my lunch, I would go out and eat with anybody else in the very, if you see our canteen in Calabarzon before, made of bamboo. It's really a very ordinary looking eatery. And I still would do that. So my source of fulfillment was the fact that I was able to influence the creation of an organizational culture that is consistent with my own values of transparency, ethics, accountability, and the promise that we can provide public service without being corrupted by the system. So that was fulfilling. Of course, it could also be, of course, some of you have witnessed when I became a Usec, some episodes with legislators that were very difficult. And so, of course, this is the real world. Not everything is a bed of roses. We have to face challenges. Even as a teacher, I know we have some challenges. If you're not very fortunate to have a principal who's considerate, who behaves like that person is conceiving, even if that person has already long menopause, it would be, days that would be full of anxiety and, pressure. But so there were moments that were difficult. Even in Calabarzon, I also had some difficulties with, some local officials who did not like my idea that the merit system should be observed in assigning superintendents, etc. And in the end, they appreciated the effort I did. But there were, along the way, difficulties, moments where you end up very anxious. And but overall, it's still a very fulfilling life in the Department of Education. The other thing that gives me lifts up my spirit is the fact that I always claim I am an exhibit A of the merit system in the Department of Education working. Because even as superintendent, as RD, and now as USEC, I never went to a politician to get appointed or to even be considered. I really can honestly assure you, fellow teachers, that if you just do your job very well, your superiors, in the case of our present leadership, Secretary Liling, takes note of the potentials of the people in the team, and she would really promote people who are able to deliver. So I assure all of you that there is hope in the Department of Education.
Thank you, sir. That was really inspiring. There might have been circumstances, but that made you shine more in front of us. And you just don't realize how many people you have inspired. Just like me. You didn't know me, but then the effect of your greatness and your leadership has really made an impact to most of us. And may God bless you for inspiring more people, sir.
Thanks, Clarice, for the affirmation.
Thank you, sir. For our ninth question, what mantra do you have that helps you keep going for your goals?
Yeah. When we exert effort, definitely results, better outcomes will follow. So I'm a firm believer that, and that always drives me to try out something new. Of course, anything that will not kill me will make me strong. Oh, ang dami ko ng mantra. So, I'm not afraid to do anything. Even in my life as a superintendent before, I would always tell people who would warn me, be careful, you behave like, people may not be happy with the way you are doing things. If you work in a system where the norm, especially, I must admit, in my earlier lives, I knew that it was more common for the officials to be, corrupt than be upright. So things like this, I would just say, I don't care if they don't like me in debit. I know I'll be productive somewhere else. So things like this, of course, in the end, my final source of inspiration, drive, is the fact that I know God has a very beautiful plan for all of us. So, and the other thing siguro, opportunity ko na rin, kasi most of you will end up becoming superintendents or qualified to be superintendents. I always would tell people, you don't allow yourselves to be obsessed with promotions because they will come in God's time. The art of waiting is another thing that I encourage people to nurture, because as I've said, when you wait, you wait cheerfully, the world is brighter. It will never be bitter.
Very true, sir. Because when you work with all of your heart and you do not think about the promotion, then it comes to you naturally, because the people everywhere sees how hard you work for our institution. And to continue, sir, this has been mentioned a while ago. Do you believe in selfless and transparent styles of leadership? Why or why not?
As I've said, that has been my banner advocacy, and I will never regret having pushed for transparency, ethics, and accountability in doing things. When we talk about transparency, of course, it's not absolute that everything is known. When we are talking about transparency, we make sure that the people affected by our decisions, if you are a leader, you'll be making decisions, are aware about the decisions. In my life as a DepEd executive, there were instances I could not appoint the highest ranking applicant for a position when I was even a superintendent. So I had to discuss with the highest ranking official. Of course, we know this, that it does not follow that because you ended up number one in the ranking for any promotion, you should get promoted. The Civil Service Commission is very clear about that. But I still would talk to the candidate who ended up obtaining the highest rank and explain why I could not appoint her. And then of course I would even say, I will respect you if you will bring me to the Civil Service Commission or anywhere. I will not take it against you. But in the end, after such a dialogue and explanation about why my decision is such, people end up appreciating. I still remember one time I had, as a regional director, I'm this disciplining authority. I had to sign an order of dismissal for a principal. And so I had to explain to the principal, it was not me as a person making the decision. It was the rules of DepEd that was telling me that I should do it. So I was doing it against my heart. But I cannot also completely say I'm not going to do it because I pity the principal. So my realization is transparency, especially if you are willing to share, to have conversations with people who may not understand your possible decisions. It ends up, building better relationships. And what I'm saying is transparency is about making sure that everyone affected by a decision is at least informed, made aware, and given the chance to also provide input. I always believe that I'm not the only one who knows. And this is what I have proven in my life of almost 37 years in DepEd. The more I seek opinion from others on how to implement certain initiatives, the better the initiatives are. I never have come to that belief that I'm the only one who knows. That's not me. I always, even now, as Usec for curriculum and instruction, I always tell my team, there are directors working with me, you know better than I do when it comes to curriculum, to teaching, learning, delivery, even assessment. I would still seek their opinions. Of course, I would read, but again, that's the other source of my strength. I never feel that I'm the only one who knows.
Transparency and consistency might be difficult. You might get a lot of bashing in exchange of that, but then that is really the key. When you don't have to conceal anything, you don't really have to be afraid of anything, and that's who you are. Thank you, sir, for that. Now, sir, for our 11th question, what has been one of your most significant contributions to the school you have worked in?
School where I was a teacher, or school where I was a principal in my first 5 years in the service. I could honestly claim that wherever I was, I mean, as a principal, as a teacher, we would be appreciated with good performance. There was like during our time NCEE, I was in charge of a school with less than 300 students. But out of the almost 100 public schools in our province, we would always be in the top 10. And in fact, I'm an industrial arts teacher, but I was a school paper advisor too because no one knew how to do it in the school. Remember, it's a barangay high school. But during division press conferences during our time, the biggest national high school would sometimes end up being second to our contestants because we really made sure that when we go out, I mean, to compete, we have prepared very well. Of course, my mantra when I was a principal was, even if we are in a barangay high school, we can also be as good as anyone else in the, of course, we also have an Ateneo in our area. We would say we can be as competitive as the Ateneo. So I think that those were my sources of pride when I was a young teacher and a young school principal, that we were really known for high performance. I remember we even had competitions on extemporaneous speaking, and if you're from a barangay high school, you compete with someone from a national high school, the traditional, well-established national high schools with thousands of students. We only had like less than 300 to choose from. Then we would bring home the championship because we really invested a lot of hard work in preparing our learners for the task.
We believe in the education that when students are really great in doing the school paper. I didn't know that you were into journalism. It's good to hear that, sir. And a lot of my English co-teachers will be surprised to hear that. We know that behind the success of our students are really the great coaches, the teachers, and the principals who help them achieve that, sir. And then aside from your achievements, it's still an achievement for the 12th question. What was the most memorable achievement you have achieved so far in your life?
Oh, there are plenty. If it's the most recent, it was the recognition from the Career Executive Service Board in 2019, where they recognized me among the five outstanding career executive officers in the whole of the government. So that was very memorable. Of course, the other, because this one is very memorable for any Filipino, when I submitted an entry in the graduate student manuscript competition, which was actually the journal article for my dissertation when I wrote my dissertation thesis. I entered it in the competition sponsored by the International Journal of Leadership and Education. Memorable, fulfilling, because I competed around the world. I was able to get the grand prize.
Wow.
And the award ceremony was done in San Francisco, California. My first ever trip to the USA, and second placer came from UK. The third placer came from the USA. So that was my proudest moment as a human being and as a writer. I mean, the journal article I wrote was found to be the deserving of the grand prize for the year 2006 yata or 2008. I forgot the year, but this was so that was very memorable because I got the privilege of traveling to the USA without having to spend anything.
And it's a good note, sir, for all of us, even with my classmates, that even you as a leader, you still continue your passion and your love for writing. Really, writing is a skill. Not everyone contains that. So I'm just so amazed now that you went that far as a grand champion. Thank you for sharing that, sir. We didn't know about this. We only get a few descriptions about you, and then we see in television, but really underneath the skills and the talents that made you in that position is just really inspiring. And for the last question, sir, what were the challenges that you have encountered when you prepared institutional plans, and how were you able to address it?
Of course, first challenge is the fact that not everybody will always be happy to support. There will always be people who would say that won't work, etc. So that's a challenge. But the what gives me like sleep of nights that give me full sleep is the thought that it's normal. In an organization, we have to acknowledge that people think in different ways. So that gives me, sabi ko nga, a peace of mind that even if there are people who would say that can't be done, members of your team that will say this is the better way to do it, etc. But I always would listen to the wisdom of the majority. So that also allowed me to at least say that the final decision was not purely mine. So that's one. Second, of course, preparing the plan, with inputs from a lot of stakeholders, as I've said, could be very difficult because there would be disagreements, debates on certain things. But executing the plan is another challenge because even if you have a well-crafted plan, you cannot anticipate everything. So you should be very flexible. So I think that's one gift God has given me. The mindset that I should not stick to, even the final decisions made by the team. I would always say everything can be modified. We can still enhance. Some of the things we are facing now may not have been anticipated. So we have to make adjustments. So I think the mindset of being open to new ways of doing things helped me surmount the challenges that came in terms of crafting the plans and at the same time implementing them.
Thank you, sir. And in this time wherein people and leaders just go with the flow, your unique decisions, your transparency, and your love for and concern for the people in this institution really give us more layer of understanding of how concerned you really are in the education department. And again, sir, thank you so much for giving us the time. Thank you for
No
taking
problem.
the time.
Thank you. Good luck, Clarice, and
Opo.
regards to all your classmates and my favorite sister, Beth.
Thank you
She's
po,
very important.
sir.
Bye-bye.
Salamat po sa lahat. God bless po.
God bless.
Thank
God
you po.
bless.